Hey, what's up, users? This is John at Muse for You, here to help you build awesome websites without code. And in this video tutorial, I'm going to go over the Zoom Hoverbox widget. I just added this to the shop, I think it was yesterday, and I'm really excited about this widget. It's a really fun effect, and I think it could really add a lot to your Adobe Muse website. So if you're looking for this type of effect. So here we have the Zoom Hoverbox. So when I hover over each image, we can see that it zooms in. Now this effect is really customizable. You can set the amount of zoom that you want to add and the rotation of the image as you hover over it. And I'll go over all the widget options in this video tutorial. So if I resize the browser, we can see I've made it responsive so that on different devices it still looks good. So with the hover boxes, it's really easy to make them responsive and look nice in Adobe Muse. So in this video tutorial, I'm going to showcase where to access the widget and how to use it. So to access the widget, you simply go to museforyoushop.com, and here you can click on the pop-up here, and then here you can click subscribe to get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year. If you'd like to subscribe with PayPal, you can click here and subscribe with PayPal. The Zoom Hoverbox widget is right here, and here you can click add to cart to purchase individually, or again you can get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year. Here are the features included, a few of the widget options, the preview page, and the video will be right underneath the preview page, the preview button once this video is done. And here's the preview page that I showcased in the beginning. So I'll go ahead and jump right into Adobe Muse. And here I'm in Adobe Muse. If you wanted to create a new site, you could go to File, New Site, and then here I'll go to the Library panel. If you don't see the Library panel, which is right here, you can go to Window and click on Library to bring up the Library panel. And here I'm going to type in Zoom to bring up the Zoom Hoverbox widget. So here I'll click, hold, and drag and place onto my Adobe Muse website. So with all the hoverbox images, the image does need to be cropped to a certain dimension if you wanted it to be a specific dimension. So for instance, if you wanted it to be a perfect square, you'd first have to crop the image to the same height and width before placing into the widget. And that just ensures that the widget is responsive in width and height, and it's how the hoverboxes work in this case here in Adobe Muse. So here are the widget options. You have the instance number. The instance number is if you have different styling for different hover boxes. And one thing I want to mention, if you're using any of the other hover boxes, you do want to change the instance number as well. Otherwise, the properties from other hover boxes will overlap. So anytime you add any hover box, you want to change the instance number if they're different hover boxes. If you had the same hover box with the same styling, you would not need to change the instance number. And then here we have the image, we have the gradient. You can add a gradient over the hover box. The effect, you can control the effect options here, and you can add 3 different titles to the hover box. Like in the example, we have it say Muse for You, and I'll go over all those options in this tutorial. So before I add an image and start working with the widget options, I want to crop the images so that they're a perfect square, and I'm going to show a few ways to crop the image. So I have a few images here, and I'll just kind of make them a little bit larger. And these are all from unsplash.com, where you can get free photos for your website. So I'll show the first way. One way that I do mention a lot in my other video tutorials is using a website called berm.net. It's a free website, so if I go to berm.net, and then here I can drag and drop files to crop them. Here I can set the width and the height, so this is really convenient. So let's say you did want a 800 by 600 the image to be 800 in width and 600 in height. You could set that within here, and if you did make because the widget is responsive in width and height, that image will stay in that proportion of the 800 by 600 proportion. So as you make the image smaller, it'll retain its dimensions. So I'll make that a bit clearer as I go through the tutorial. So for the images, I want them to be a perfect square, for instance. So I could say something like 800 by 800. I could even say 600 by 600 if I know that my image isn't going to be larger than, let's say, 500 by 500. On the largest breakpoint, the image will be 500 by 500 at the max. So I can set it to 600 so I don't lose any quality in the image as it's getting larger. So I'll create a perfect square of 600 by 600, and then I'll drag and drop a few images here, some ice cream, this image, or we'll do this image, and for some reason I have this image of this guy in an espresso machine that's really cool. Here it is. So we'll use those three images, and I'll click, hold, and drag and place into berm. And as we can see, it crops the image to a perfect square because it's 600 by 600. And here all I have to do is click on save.zip, and it'll download a zip file. And then I'll go ahead and place that zip file in this images folder. Okay, so there's the zip file. Let me just clean this up a little bit. And there we have the zip file. So it's called berm. I'll double click, and there we have the zip folder. So now I have these three images that are perfect squares. So if I go into the widget and I go to add file for select an image, I can go into the berm folder and select one of these images. So I'll select this computer, for instance. And as we can see, it's a perfect square. So even if I were to make the widget container larger, let's say I made it 300 by, or I can say 350, we're going to see that the width, as the width gets wider, so does the height. If I were to make the height 400, it's just going to add more height, but it's not going to change the width. So we can see that there's a bit of white space here within the widget container, which we don't really need. So I'm going to just bring that up, and there we have the widget with the image. So already we have a zoom hover box. So I'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, and if I make the browser smaller, it's responsive in width and height. And we have set a minimum width and a maximum width. So if you didn't want the image to get lower than a certain width, you could set that in the minimum width option. So once it reaches a certain width, it doesn't get smaller than that. And you can set a maximum width. So if you had a large breakpoint and you didn't want the image to get larger as the browser gets wider, you could set a maximum width. So you can really control the sizing of that image as the browser's getting smaller or wider, and for different devices there. So just as an example, I know I mentioned one last thing I'll mention too. So here we have the maximum width 550. So I was able to make the image 600 by 600 because here in the widget options, I'm saying don't get larger than 600 pixels in width. Okay, so hopefully that was clear. If you have any questions about that, let me know. So I'll go back into berm.net, and let's say, for instance, I wanted to do make the width a little bit larger than the height. So I set 800 by 600, and then I'll say save.zip, and here the JPEG quality, let's make it 100. I don't want to lose quality on my images. When I'm making larger images a bit smaller, sometimes I don't change the quality because it's already going to be a good file size because the image is smaller. But if you did want to run it through a compressor as well, that will reduce the file size. So you could run it through like compressed JPEG to reduce the file size of that image. So I've saved it at 800 by 600. JPEG quality is 100%. So let me bring that berm folder in here again. Okay, so now I have this berm folder, and I'll unzip and click on the folder. So here I have the image that are 800 by 600. So I'll add one of those images in here. So we have berm copy because it was kind of another folder there. Or let me bring in the same image here. Okay, so as we can see, the widget container is a perfect square, but the image is 800 by 600, which is not a perfect square. So here I can just bring up the widget container to remove that extra space. So here we can see the proportions. Now it's 350 by 262. And that's just that proportion, that 800 and 600 by 600 proportion. So again, if I preview in the browser and I make it smaller, that image will retain its proportions. Okay, so hopefully that was clear. If you have any questions, let me know. Another way you can crop images, so if I go back here into the originals, let's say, I'll open one of the images here, this one here, so I'll right click. I can open it with preview on my Mac. So I'll right click, open with preview here. So yeah, let me do that again. Right click, open with, preview, and it'll open up in preview. And here I can select or crop the image how I would like. So I can actually select where to crop it. So I can create a perfect square by holding down Shift and just dragging out like that. And there I have it cropped. And then I can go to Tools and Crop or Command K right here in the preview. And then I'll hit Command S to save, and I'll close this here. So I'll right click. Let me just see how large this image is. It's 1.9 megabytes because it's 3,197 by 3,197. So I can go back, right click, open with preview, and I can go to Tools, Adjust Size, and I could say 600 by 600 and click OK. I can leave the resolution at 72 because it's for digital, it's for screens. You know, higher resolution I think would be more for print. So I can leave this at 72 and it's in pixels. So I'll click OK. And then I'll hit Command S to save. All right. And then I'll right click, get info. And now the size is 86 kilobytes. That's really good. Okay, so I'll close this here. And now if I go back into the widget, go into select an image, go into images, and now I can select that cropped image that I just cropped there. All right, so either way works. You can do it right in preview. And if you have another cropping tool, you can use that as well. However you crop it is fine. It's just it needs to be cropped if you want it to be a certain dimension. Okay, so now that I've covered the cropping, let me go over the widget options. So we've set the minimum width, the maximum width. We've selected an image, and here you can add an image alternative text to let the search engines know what the image is about, and for screen readers that don't show images. So here I can say person with a camera. Okay, there for the alternative text. And I could link this hover box to an internal page, external page, or anchor point. And right in here, I write how to link to those different sections. I don't want to link it for now, so I'm just going to uncheck enable link. And then we can add a gradient. So let me add some colors for my CC libraries to my swatches panel. So I'll open up CC libraries and I'll just select all these, right click, add to swatches. And now I have those colors in my swatches panel. So now I'll open up the widget options. I'll go to gradient, and I can set the gradient angle, the first gradient color, and the second gradient color, and the opacity for each of the gradients. So I can do something really nice here for the gradient. Just pick two colors. And for the first gradient, I'll set an opacity of 0.8 as well. 0 is no opacity, which is not visible, and 1 is fully visible. If I set these both to 1, we wouldn't be able to see the image behind. It would just be a gradient, which is an interesting effect if you wanted to go for that as well with no image. But I do want to see the image in the background, so I'll set the gradient for each to 0.8 so we can kind of see the image in the back, and then I can set the angle. You know, if I wanted the gradient to be at a certain angle, I could set it here within the gradient angle option. All right, and then I'll preview in the browser. I'll hover, and there we have the hover box. Looks good. So one more time, I was kind of quick there. Boom, hover box, nice. All right, so now I'll go to, the gradient, and now I'll go to the effect section. This is where you can change the background color, the effect hover speed, scale on hover, the rotate on hover, and the text align. So for the background color, this comes in handy if you want to zoom out the image, and I'll show that in a second. Here you can set the effect hover speed, how quickly or slowly you want the hover to, or the image to scale and rotate. So you'd set that here. It is in seconds, so 0.35 seconds. Yeah, so it's 0.35 seconds there. Scale on hover, 1 is the default size of the image. Anything greater than 1 will zoom in the image. Anything less than 1 will zoom out the image and show the background color. And I do have that in the widget option, so it's kind of easy to reference there. So 1 is the default. If you have it set to 1, there will be no zoom, and it'll just rotate. So if I set it to 1 and I go to File, Preview in the browser, we can see it just rotates and there's no zoom. You kind of want it to zoom because we see the background of the hover box there. Okay, so let me go back into the effect. So if I were to say 2, we'd have more of a zoom. And then we can set the rotate. You can have it rotate a lot. So like you could have it rotate in multiples of 360. So it'll do like 3 rotations. So if I say 720, that'll be two rotations. So I'll preview in the browser. When I hover, it rotates twice and then zooms in as well. I'd want to change the speed if I wanted to kind of see those rotations a bit more. So I'll say 2 seconds for the hover speed. And then when I hover, it rotates. Cool. I probably wouldn't have it rotate like that. So let me go to the effect and we'll just say rotate 45 degrees and we'll set the hover speed back to 3.5 or 0.35, the scale on hover 2, and that looks good there. So let's preview that and boom, that looks nice. Bam, looks like he's kind of rotating the camera, which is a cool effect there. All right, so let me go back into the widget options. The effect, you can align the text to the left, the center, or the right there. Okay, so you can do that there in the effects section. So yeah, that looks good. So that is the effects section, and then you can add 3 different titles. So for the title, you can choose the text color, the font size. The font size is in EM, so 1 EM equals 16 pixels. So 2.8 is about 44 pixels. So you just want to reference that when you're deciding the font size there. So and EM is kind of becoming more of a standard for font size units. So I've decided to use those in the widget. So the font weight, you can set the font weight. 400 is normal. Anything less than 400 is thinner. Anything greater than 400 is bolder. Letter spacing is or tracking is the distance between the letters. So if I say 5, it'll put more distance between the letters. So we can see the word Muse has more distance between the letters there. Okay, and you can set the line height to add more spacing between each of the titles. So if I say 3, it'll add quite a bit of spacing between the titles there. And one line height doesn't really have units. It's kind of relative to the font size. So you can think of the line height being in EMs as well, but you can just play with that and see, you know, how much line height you want to add between elements there. Okay, so the title, the widget options for the different titles, they're all the same. So you can add 3 different titles there. So if I were to change the titles to, you know, zoom there, and let me change the letter spacing to 1, and then the title 2, I said zoom, hover, and then title 3, hover, box, just like that. So now we have zoom, hover, box. And let me add less opacity to the background there, so we can see that image even a bit better. Boom, looks good. Nice. So for this image, yeah, actually, you know, for in the preview page, I've cropped it so the camera's right in the center, so it has that cool, like the camera is in focus effect. Oops. If I go back here, yeah, here we go. So that's the same image. So the camera is just kind of coming right in the center there. All right, so let me add one more image. So I'm going to copy and paste this, and I'll put this right here. So let's say, for instance, I wanted a different image with different properties. In the select image section, I'll just select a new image, and I'll go to, I'll select one of these images here of the computer. Looks good, and I can say for the alternative text, image of a computer, and just like that, we have that image there. So we notice the instance number is the same, which is fine. It's just that these 2 images will have the same properties applied to them, or these 2 hover boxes. If I were to change the properties here, it would change the properties for the first one. So the hover box that's further down or to the right will take precedence over any of the hover box that are first if they have the same instance number. So here, if I wanted different properties, I could just go to the instance number and change it to instance number 2, and then I could have completely different colors and everything. It doesn't matter if the text is the same. If they have the same, for instance, the same instance number, I could, you know, change the text and it would just have the same color properties. So if you did want to change the text, and have the same color properties, you wouldn't need to change the instance number. So as we can see, go to preview, the text is different, but the styling and the effect is still the same. Okay, so let's say we wanted a completely new type of effect, kind of effect speed, different gradients. We would want to change the instance number. So now I'll go to the gradient and I'll create a new gradient here, change the properties here, and we'll change the degrees, 45 for the gradient angle. The title, we'll say, yeah, we'll leave that just like that. And the effect, we'll make it, the effect hover speed, we'll say 1. Zoom in, we'll say 1.5. Degrees, we'll say 120. Or actually, I'll showcase this. For the scale on hover, I'll say 0.5. And this is going to be kind of interesting. Text align, I'll say center. So now I'll go to File, Preview, Page in the browser. I zoom in, and we can see that it zooms out. If we didn't have a gradient, we would just see the background color. Here in the effects section, we see it says background color. So if I were to change this to white, it would have a lighter background color when the image zooms out. So we can see it's kind of lighter here in the background because it has a white background. And let me showcase that maybe a bit better. Let me go to the effect, change the color to light blue, and then I'll say for the gradient, I'll say no gradient. If you didn't want any gradient, just set these both, the gradient opacity to 0 for both of them. And I'll preview, and there we go. So we can see it zooms out and we can see the background color. And I probably wouldn't have it rotate so much, so maybe like, yeah, maybe like 5 degrees. That might look nice. So it rotates a little bit and then zooms out. Just like that. You could have it not rotate at all and just zoom out. So I'll set it to 0 for the rotation. And I'll preview in the browser. Just like that. Looks good. So if you did want completely different styling for different hover boxes on your web page, you'd want to make sure that the instance number is different. And just as an example, I'm going to bring in a completely different hover box. So let me go to my library panel and I'll bring in the 180 text reveal hover box widget. I'll place it in there and we'll put it down here. And let me add an image. So click add file and yeah, we'll use this ice cream here. Let me make it a little bit larger. And there we go. I just dragged out the widget container to make the image larger, because once the widget container gets larger, so does the height as well, because it stays constrained in width and height. All right. So I'm going to go to preview page in browser. And as we can see, we have this awkward thing occurring where it's not really the effect we want to see. And that's because the widget options are being inherited for this one and this one, because they have the same instance number. So we see kind of does something weird there. So what we want to do is change the instance number for this hover box so they don't inherit properties from each other. So there we go, hoverbox and zoom hoverbox. So that goes across the board for all hoverboxes. If you do have different hoverboxes on the page, just make sure the instance number is different, and that will ensure that none of the hoverboxes are inheriting different properties from each other. All right, looks good. So I think I've covered everything. Let me talk a little bit about responsive. So let's say, for instance, I had a breakpoint at 600. We can see that the hoverboxes get smaller because, again, it's using the Adobe Muse responsive properties, where the hoverboxes are getting smaller as you make the width of the browser smaller. The hoverboxes will get smaller as well. Let's say, for instance, you didn't want that to occur. You didn't want the hoverboxes to get smaller. So let me preview that just to see how that looks. So as we resize, we can see the hoverboxes get smaller. If you didn't want that to occur, all you'd have to do is go into the widgets here, select them all, and in the built-in resize option in Adobe Muse, just click the drop down and set for responsive, set it to none. And then the widgets would not change across the different breakpoints. There we go. So for this one, these do change already because the breakpoint, when we set the breakpoint, it was already set to responsive. So when that breakpoint set, the hover boxes became smaller. We can easily remedy this by, first of all, saying none here as well. Here we see it says responsive width, or we could just delete the breakpoint and create the breakpoint again. And now it's inheriting the responsiveness from the larger breakpoint there. And then we could easily just reposition the elements so they look nicer for that breakpoint there. So if you did want all the hoverbox images to stay the same size across all devices, you could easily do that by setting the responsiveness to none. So as we can see, as we go to the 600 breakpoint, the position of the hoverboxes changes. And if I did want that to be completely centered within the browser as the browser width changes, I would just pin the elements in the center using the responsive pinning option here. So as the browser width gets smaller, all of those elements will stay in the center. We have this nice dashed line to kind of let us know that it's pinned in the center with the responsive pinning options. So here, let me just make sure that these are all in the center, and then I'll center it with the align tool here as well. Just center it there to make sure it's exactly within the center of the browser. There we go, looks good. All right, let me change the properties of this hoverbox so that it zooms in. Let's say 1.5, and the effect hover speed, let's say 0.35. All right, and I'll preview in the browser, and there we have it. Looks good. So there we have the zoom hoverbox along with the 180 text reveal hoverbox to kind of showcase using the different, using the instance number option. And if you did want to change the text for the hoverboxes, I did write it here within the widget options. To change the font type for the text, select the widget and then go to the built-in Adobe Muse text option in the upper toolbar. From here, you can select any web font from the fonts menu. So here I can select all three, and I can go to the text option right up here in the upper toolbar, or the text panel in Adobe Muse. I'll just go to the text panel up here, click the drop down, and I'll select, we'll do Lotto. Or let's get kind of fancy with it, and we'll do a lush script here. And just like that, it should be changing here. Was that a web font? Yeah, okay, so let's see how that looks. File, preview in the browser. And there we go. It changes when you preview in the browser. All right, so let me bring in the font smoother. I love bringing that in because it makes the fonts look really nice. The web fonts. For system fonts, it doesn't have any effect because system fonts are more like images. And I'm going to change that lush script because it looked a little bit strange. We'll just use Lotto. And I'll say Lotto regular. You can choose the regular option and then just change the font weight within the widget options there. All right, so there we have Lotto and we have the widgets there, the hover boxes. So that's it for this video tutorial. Again, that's the Zoom hoverbox widget, and here are all the widget options. If you have any questions about this widget, you can leave it in the comment section below. But yeah, I had a lot of fun working on this widget, and I think it's a really nice effect to add to your Adobe Muse website. So to get access to this widget, you can go to museforyoushop.com. And here you can click on the pop-up, and here you can click subscribe to get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year. Or if you'd like to subscribe with PayPal, you can click here and subscribe with PayPal. The Zoom Hoverbox widget is right here, and here you can click add to cart to purchase individually, or again, you can get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year. Here are the features included, a few of the widget options, the community section if you had any questions about the widget, and the preview page if you wanted to see the widget here. And we can see it's responsive and looks good across all breakpoints. Alright, so that's it for this video tutorial. Let me go back to the shop here. Again, I do this to help you build awesome websites without code. If you like this video tutorial, you can subscribe below. Also in the show more section are links to other resources and links to museforYouShop.com. I'll also leave a link to unsplash.com down there. It's where I used where I got a lot of those images that I used in this video tutorial. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Thank you.